creating a painting of Lamplight, the first thing you're going to need to have is a good resource photo. One that has some detail, but the main thing is the contrast of the light up against the dark. Looking at the resource photo, you want to simplify it into the basic shapes. You do not want to draw too much of the detail before you begin painting. A ruler or straight edge is going to be a necessity. Especially when you're drawing the pole, you want it to be nice and straight. As you draw, think about the main shapes and think about how you can simplify your drawing. Before we start painting, you're going to want to wet down most of the watercolor paper. This can be done with a watercolor brush, or if you have a clean sponge handy, that will work as well. We'll start our painting by mixing up quinacridone gold and raw sienna. You'll take this color and paint it around the lamp. Since the paper is damp, this color should bleed out and create the glow effect around the lamp that we're looking for. If there are any other areas in your painting where there is going to be light shining through, such as windows or maybe a door, be sure to include that as well. To avoid making green in the sky, we're going to mix rose madder, lavender, and cerulean blue, and possibly a touch of cobalt. Mix this paint in a milk consistency, and you're going to paint over everything except for the glowing around your lamp. Paint over the buildings, paint over the ground. This will become your underpainting. It's a base coat of the main color that will be in your painting. We will be able to glaze over this several times to create the darkness in the painting. If there is any light reflecting on the ground in your painting or anywhere else, use the quinacridone gold and raw sienna mixture and paint it in the areas needed. Taking the cerulean blue mixture, make it a little bit thicker. Make the consistency more like milk as you're coming down. And this will enable you to create a glaze over the top of the underpainting and start seeing how it's going to darken that area. We'll be going over the sky area several times with several glazes to get at the darkness that we really need. Clean your brush really well and wipe it down with your paper towel so that you may soften the middle area in your lamp, also around the outside area where the blue is touching the glow. I want to mix up some more of the blue, and this time I'm going to include some cobalt to make it just a little bit darker. I'm going to take that mixture and I'm going to start doing another glaze right over the top of what I've just done, making sure that that bottom layer is dry before putting this layer on. We do not want this to be wet into wet. You want it to be wet on dry, where we have one dry glaze and we put a wet glaze right on top of it. Allow that to dry and we just continue going. Once that glaze dried, I realized it still wasn't dark enough. So I took three other colors. I took Payne's Gray, Cobalt Blue, and Cerulean this time to make it even darker. watercolor always dries lighter, which is why this painting is a challenge. I wanted the sky to be very, very dark, and after it dried with the hairdryer, I noticed it got even lighter. So I started again with some more Payne's Gray, cerulean, and also the cobalt, and this time it became even darker. Since I was pleased with the darkness or the value of this color, I'm going to go ahead and start fine-tuning some of the shapes that are in my painting, going around the glow and also the outsides of my buildings. Now it's time to start thinking about the ground and the buildings. I'm mixing up some quinacridone gold and taking some raw sienna and a little bit of burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of burnt umber and mixing it all together to get a dark brown. The color isn't as important here as what the effect is going to be when you're painting it. In this situation, there was a very rough road, I think it's made out of cobblestone, that I'm wanting to show the impact of it at night. In the darker areas, I'm taking my Payne's Gray now and mixing it with some burnt umber, so I have that same brown, but making it even darker so I can have those shadows stand out. Taking that dark color, I'm going to paint in my buildings. And then looking at my resource photo, the building on the left and the building on the right are very dark. However, there are more lamps down the street, so that's why some of the buildings down farther are lighter. I'm being careful to paint around those windows and doors. I don't want to paint over them. So it's called negative painting when you're painting around something like this, because you're painting in the negative space. Some of those windows and doors actually have like windowsills and different things that I'm going to add, created with just simple lines. I definitely want to show the contrast between the buildings and the ground, but there's not as much contrast between the buildings and the sky, since the sky is still very dark. I lightened that color and added a little bit of cobalt blue to it, and that's what I'm using to paint the buildings that are in the middle. And I realized that there's one section of the sky that I forgot to paint, so I'm going to come back in and I'm going to have to match that color the best as I can. So I'm going to get dark very quickly here and fill in that section. being careful to paint around the post that holds my lamp on the top. Well, the buildings in the middle have some interesting textures on them because there are windows and some different things on the top with the roof, but I don't want to show too much of them because I don't want to overpower it with detail. My lamp is the main part of the story here. It is a center of interest. It's what I want to see. I believe this is probably the 5th time that I've gone over this with a wash and glazing it over with a darker color. I noticed that there was some texture in the sky that I didn't like, so I wanted to get rid of it. Now I'm taking that dark color, using my raw sienna mixed with a little bit of the Payne's Gray and the quinacridone gold. I'm using that and my rigger brush to outline the details in the lamp. Now some of that light from the lamp is coming down and shining on the pole, but there's also some pretty harsh shadows on it as well. So what I'm doing is carefully leaving some of that lighter color so that we can still see the lamp post, but we can also see the shadows. There's some rings around the post, so I put those in by putting some lines curved, not straight across. Since the post is curved, I want to show that contour by making those lines curved. Getting down here on the bottom part, it's a little bit more shadowed, and then taking some of that color and making a little bit of a shadow right at the bottom of the post. I wanted to increase the texture on the road. So what I did was I took my rigger brush and I added some thin lines of that same color kind of going through the light that's on the ground, but making it look like that is rough. Now I'm taking my rigger brush and coming in and drawing those lines to create those windows. Finish things out, I took my rigger brush and the white gouache. I took the white gouache straight out of the tube and added some small dots in the background where there's some more lights. And here's the finished painting.